Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of maintenance and repair on a BenQ W1080. Right there, you can see it. Part 1, we took it apart. We found that it was moderately dirty, had a lot of smoke inside from a wood stove or a fireplace, which we cleaned out. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to check the color wheel and color wheel assembly to make sure that the sensor is clean, because the original complaint was that it would run, the colors would act up, and then it would shut down, and that's characteristic of a color wheel issue, usually dirty. So because of how this is put together, I'm afraid to try to sneak the color wheel out. I think it would be wiser to remove the optic assembly. Now at the end of part 1, I said part 2 would be putting this all back together, and it will be, but first we're going to take this out. So let's say I got 1, 2, is that it? Only 2 screws? Oh no, there's the third. There's usually at least 3. There we are. Now it should lift up. Yep. There we are. Let's slide that out. Lens cap out of the way. And here's the optic assembly. Pardon me. It's like all other DLP optic assemblies. Light goes in through there. There's a color wheel that spins around. You can see it. There's the color wheel right here. And then that goes through all the optics and eventually comes out that short throw lens. So this is where I want to get. And I was going to try and take out that screw. I think that screw releases the color wheel. Just looking at how the brackets are set together. But I can't bring it out the top. So if I think I take that screw out, the whole thing's going to come this way. So let's see. Take that screw out. It's loose. So it's lifted up past those alignment pins. No, it's not coming out. That means that shield has to come off. I was a little worried about that. I don't think I've ever replaced a color wheel on one of these before. Ever had to. I've done plenty of BenQs, but I don't think I've done a color wheel on a W1080ST. So let's take off the that shroud or shield. Yeah, there we go. Now you can really see the color wheel better. You can see how they balance it. It spins really fast, so it has to be balanced. It feels good. It spins well. It's a good test, as it should, with minimal effort, it should spin really well. And it does. So it's probably just that sensor. So let's try this again. Take this screw out, and then that whole assembly should be loose. Now, I don't recommend it this way, but one way to handle a color wheel assembly, if you can't get a good grip on it, is to hold both wires at the same time. But since this has a little shield, I can hold it by that until I have it out. Now we can see the whole assembly. Set that out of the way. The sensor is the end of this wire, so it's right here. It's on the back side, so it has to come off. So I have to take 1, 2, 3 screws out. Let me find something to set this on so I can work on it safely. There we go. Here's a nice surface. It's just some doubled up egg crate foam. Just want something I can set it on. I want flat foam because the curved stuff can leave chances of cracking, putting too much stress if you set it down too hard or lean on it at all. Alright, there's one screw loose. There's two. Looks like I have plenty of screws loose. My wife would agree with that. There we go. The color wheel just dropped into my hand. So let's set that. Actually, let's set it this way so I'm not leaning on the glass. And then my finger over it. There's the sensor. That little black rectangle. And you can't really tell because of how small it is, but it's dirty. You set that down here. I'll show you. If I didn't just knock the dirt off. But that thing right there, you see if it shows how clean it is after I wipe it off. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but the dust gets over top of these little apertures that the infrared light comes out of and then gets picked up by the other one. So now it's clean. I'm happy with that. And let's look at the wheel too and make sure the index mark is clean. If the hub gets dirty, it's rare. If this gets too much dust buildup on it, that little black mark, it'll throw it off. Actually, the whole thing really. Just going to run this just kind of along it to make sure there's no dust waiting to fall on it. Alright, like that. And I guess I didn't actually have to... I guess I did have to take all those screws off, but to put it back together it'll be a little easier. So we'll put this screw back in first. You can see it sits on top. And that guy goes in. Snug it. It's good. That's a little cleaner. Just got a Kim wipe and just kind of get that surface dust off, not putting any pressure on it. And this has to go back on this way. Both wires come out the same side. It should just kind of drop down. And I'll hold it by the hub in the center, never touching the glass. Oops. Of course, one screw falls out. Of course. There, one down. Then the second one. And we can plug the sensor wire end back in. Not bad. This is ready to go back in the optic assembly. You can see it sits right there. There we go. Then have the shroud. Mask, maybe light mask. It's not quite a gobo. Oops. May have to remagnetize the screwdriver. Come on. There we go. Not focusing real well that close. All right. So the mask is back in place. Color wheel is back in and snug. I may want to clean in here, but I don't know. That's one of those things where sometimes you're better off leaving well enough alone. But to verify that, I am going to take the inspection cover off. I think this might be for something they do in the factory for setting it up, because it's a little port to the inside. But I can use that along with my flashlight to see if it's dirty. And it's a little dusty. I'm going to go just kind of hit it with the air compressor. Just a quick little, and that'll do it. All right. Turned out pretty good. See if I can get y'all a view. There's the DLP chip. It's my finger. Here, I'll try it this way. I'll shine through the front. You can see that little dot. That's my flashlight. And the amount of dust is much lower inside now. So I'm going to leave it like that. That's fine. I'm going to put this cover back on. It's probably for some sort of alignment procedure, but it does work as a nice inspection port too. Okay, this can go back in the projector now. And just like it came out, it'll go back in. A lot of projectors are just sort of tilt, slide it in. There's a notch down there that helps keep it in position, like that. Alright, looks like our alignment pins are all in place, yeah? Yeah, it looks good. Alright, let's put some screws back in. Now, since these hold the optic block, I'm going to do these by hand. I don't want to crack those plastic towers. They're probably not as soft as the top cover, but they're probably still a little brittle. So I bring them down until it stops, and then just a tiny bit more until I feel the resistance. I imagine there's torque specs, so we'll go click. There we go. Now it's torqued. All right, that was a joke. Those are out of the way. This has to be out of the way. That's good. Let's get that ground wire. Just trying to get the wires ready to set this back portion back in the frame for the main board. Let's see, those are good. So yeah, now I can put this back in. There we are. You got to clear the low voltage header. There's fingers that go around the side of the outlet, the plug, the AC plug. Then it's down. All right, so then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's it. Can't remember if there's 3 or 4 on this. We'll find out. There's 1. So I'm not sure if the 4th one was the ground screw. Of course, because I can't remember to the other video. Come on. Ah, that's okay. Good to know. The second level, there's a second spacer on the low voltage connector that can get hung up, so keep an eye on that. Let's check this side. Yeah, so I just have one screw goes down here and then the ground screw. That's right, because we have a screw up here. That's the 4th screw. But that doesn't go on until the top cover goes on. And our ground wire. All right. Looks good. Wires are, pardon me, wires are not in the way. Let's get our color wheel wire back in the holder. These actually help. They really do. That's good. I think this one's going to go through it, but just set it there for now. All right, main board. The main board's got a connector for the DLP. Lines up right there, that edge connector. Oh, here's all our chips and analog devices. HDMI chip. Ah, heck, let's look at the board real quick. Just kind of see what's going on. This is pretty much the top, engineering-wise, of the home theater, you know, sub $2,000 video projector. They're all basically this design. You know, depending on, sometimes the keyboard's on a separate board, but the chips are basically the same. We have the paired DLP chips from TI. There's the ROM. That's the firmware for the projector, your menu and everything. There's probably a debug header on here somewhere, or they're doing it probably through the serial port. Then we have the HDMI chip, a bunch of power stuff, a bunch more power stuff. I was looking for the color wheel driver. Usually it's a 14-pin chip, but I don't see it here. They might be doing like an H-bridge thing with those transistors here. I'll bet you that's what they're doing, because it looks like the collector and emitters tied together on each pair. I bet you they're doing an H-bridge to drive that. Low voltage regulators, infrared, and then all our jacks on the back. So like I said, it's pretty much about the peak of, you know, consumer level home theater projectors. It's no Runco LS10, put it that way. And between you and me, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. Let's see. You know what? Let's put the board on and then the cover. So the board, I don't want that to get curled over. I'm trying to get that where we want it. Now the hard part is lining up that low voltage pin in there. Turn autofocus on. Yeah. Right here. That pin down in there. So I just want to get it straight. Then we push down. Get that DLP connector lined up too. Right here. Let's get that lined up. That goes down. And we go back to the low voltage, give that a little push, and that'll go down. wire caught under there. I didn't want that. Oh, I have another wire caught. There we are. So I was trying to pull them out so they don't do that. I might as well plug these back in. So let's see, lamp blower fan, power supply fan, lamp exhaust fan, ballast control, speaker, which way does that go? All right. It's going by the folding wire. That's sensor. Color wheel index sensor. DLP fan. And then IR board from the front. That's all the wires. Now let's set the cover on. Shield. The RF shield. Prevent all the RFI, radio frequency interference, because it is there. Sometimes it seems silly, but it does help. There we go. Come on, there we go. Set that in place. And then this is all machine screws with star washers on top. Now I'm going to put a few in the front before I put this back panel on, because I may need a little bit of flex. But I'm going to start these to help everything stay in place. There's our ground point between the shield and that lower frame. Again, I'm just kind of starting these. Now this one up in the front, I'm going to put down all the way, because that's a thin area of the metal. It'll flex enough for what I need. And I actually want this to be snug. I don't want that to pull apart. Alright, and then we have there's a plastic shield between the ballast and the main board. It's a good idea. And these are short, so I'm only going about a turn and a half. That should be enough. Now let's put this on. So I needed a little bit of flex just to get that up and over. Yeah, that's good. Let's get our little 5mm nut driver, or 5mm nut driver, not mil. 5mm. 5mm. Alright, let's set these in, because we need to put these guys back in. And that screw, we'll put that back in, and then we'll tighten the screws on the main board. Staying frame, Frank. And like I said, these, I'd say do these by hand. I wouldn't even put a handle on this, because you don't want them to be too tight. As snug as you can get them with your fingers is about as snug as they need to be. We have the screw for the AV jack. It's cool they have S-video and video and HDMI. Covers all of the connectors you need. Alright. That's back in place. Need to put this cover back in. It came off with the top when we opened it, because I guess it was trying to be helpful. You just need to line up all the little plastic notches, and you'll hear it snap into place just like that. So essentially it's back together. We have a little more work to do before we can put the top on, but we really are at a point where we can test it. To test it, we're going to have to bypass this interlock. There's a couple ways to do that. So let me see. Let me get the lamp. Let's set the lamp in. Looks good. Let me get a better camera angle. There we go. Kill some of these upper lights and get a better view. So power's in, but there's no standby because the AC is interrupted. Now, there are different ways you can make that switch stay in. You could jam a screwdriver in there. Some people will get a, just a flathead and just kind of wedge it in that little gap. That works pretty well. My only concern about that, though, is if it were to pop out and hit something, you have metal flying around. So I do the same thing, but I usually try to get a Q-tip or a cotton swab stick. That one's not really cooperating. So when the gap is that small, I keep all kinds of just scrap plastic. This is used to wrap around a ballast in an Epson, but you can use it for all sorts of things. So in this case, we're going to use it as a shim to hold that button in place, just like that. If I have to, I can pop it out real easy if I need to kill power to it for some reason in an emergency manner. So that holds that in. Let's turn the power strip on. We get our standby lights. Now it's ready to go. It's booted. Let me take the lens cap off. I don't need to cook that. And power. So the color wheel should spin up in a second. Yep. Lamp just ignited. You can probably see that. Fans are all running. The light looks good, shining through the mask pretty well. That wheel is a little noisy though. You hear that whine? Probably could use a new wheel. I'm going to get a price on one, but we'll see if the customer's interested. The real trick to see if it works will be getting some time on it. So what I need to do now is really put the top back on. And then just hook it up to a video source and just let it run a while. So that's what we'll do. Turn the power off. Turning off, please wait. And I still need to clean the top and the door. So I'll do that and then set the top on. And this will be the end of part 2. Part 3 will be testing this projector with a video signal on it. So, as usual, thanks for watching.